How does a person become fluent in English? How does a child become fluent in English? We have a lot to talk about today, so please make yourself a drink, sit on the floor or on the couch, and let's get cozy.
Thank you.
A lot of non-native English speakers want to teach their babies or their children English at home naturally before their kids start school. And this is usually a really good idea, right? Because then your baby can learn English comfortably at home with a person who they love, you. And then when they start learning English at school in a classroom, they already have a solid foundation in English. They already have some confidence in English. They're already comfortable with the language to some degree. And this leads to a better experience for most people. If you have not yet downloaded my PDF of natural phrases to use with your child, I highly recommend that you do that. These are natural phrases that I use every day with my son, and they are organized by parts of the house. So there are natural phrases to use with your children in the kitchen, in the bedroom, in the bathroom, etc. And you can download that from the link down below. And you will also get my weekly emails where I share all sorts of useful stuff for raising your children with English naturally at home. You guys, I live in the craziest city. There is a bald eagle flying around in the sky outside my window right now. I also want to show you something. I don't want to move the camera because then I'll have to get it back in this position, but maybe I can use my phone. This is the disaster happening to the side right now that you cannot see on this camera. It is an absolute disaster of laundry and just stuff that I have moved out of the frame so that it won't be too distracting for you. But just know if your home is a mess right now, I feel you. So as I was saying, a lot of parents want to raise their children, want to teach English to their babies at home, but there are a lot of challenges. When you are a non-native English speaker, when you live in a community, when you live in a community that is non-English speaking, there can be a lot of challenges to speaking enough English to your children every day in order for them to get a solid foundation in English. And so I was hiking recently with my family, with my husband and with my son. We were hiking up a mountain, and I was reminded of a lot of these challenges. I was thinking about these challenges a lot and how we can fix them, how we can find solutions to some of the biggest problems, and how we can raise fluent speakers, in your case, fluent English speakers at home, and how I can raise my son speaking French and Spanish fluently. So these are some of the solutions, some of the mindset shifts that are helping me, that are helping some of the other parents who I work with, and I hope they will help you today too. And if you don't have babies or kids, that's okay. You can still watch this video too. You're allowed, because really what we're doing when we're teaching English to our babies is we are creating an English speaking partner at home. We're creating a person who we can practice speaking the language with all day at home. And you can do this with your friend, with your mom, with your roommate, with your brother. It doesn't have to be your baby. Okay, my notes are a disastrous mess. If we don't already know each other, my name is Brittany. I live in Canada, in an English-speaking city in Canada, with my husband and with my son. And since my son was born, my husband has been speaking to him in French. French is my husband's first language, and I have been speaking to my son in English. And so he is currently quite bilingual in both languages. And when he was around 3 years old, we started teaching him some Spanish as well. My husband is a fluent Spanish speaker. I am like very beginner level in Spanish. The process for teaching a baby a language from birth versus teaching a toddler a language is different. I've talked about this a lot with the parents who I work with in my membership. You can learn a language at any age, you can start at any age, but the process is different. And also, all children are different, all families are different. It's been a really interesting experience to see him getting exposed to those 2 additional languages at different ages. So we went on a hike recently. I believe the elevation gain on this mountain is like 800 meters. And the plan was for my son to hike this all by himself on his own 2 feet. So quite the challenge, quite the challenge. We did this same hike about 4 years ago when he was just a year old. And that time we carried him the entire way. We carried him in like a baby backpack, a baby hiking backpack. So 4 years later, a lot has changed. And when I was looking at the footage, the videos of 4 years ago versus today, versus when we recently did this hike, I was struck by a couple of things. It is so weird seeing video of yourself and your child in the same exact place, but at different times, 4 years apart. In many ways, it doesn't feel like that much has changed, but I can see very clearly in the video how much my son has changed, how much he has learned in 4 years. It's very easy to see the passage of time when we look at a baby or a little kid. And if we're thinking about language, when he was a year old, he didn't say any words. He had not said his first word yet at this point. And now, 4 years later, he is able to converse, to speak fluently and clearly in 2 languages, and he knows a little bit of a 3rd language. That's amazing. It just blows my mind how much can happen in 4 years. And maybe there's a little bit of a lesson here for me where, like in the moments where it feels really difficult to continue working on these additional languages. Is this really worth it? And then I see video like this and I am reminded like, wow, yes, it happens really slowly. It doesn't happen in one day or like in 1 month. He doesn't become a fluent speaker in 1 month. It happens really slowly and you can't necessarily see it. You can't really see it well as it's happening, but it is happening. It's happening slowly, and 4 years later, I can see it so clearly, and I'm so glad that we didn't give up, that we continued doing this. Just a good little reminder there. And then another thing that struck me as I watched this video footage is how much we had to do as the parents, mom and dad, in those old videos when he was a year old going up this mountain. We had to carry him in a backpack every step of the way or in the front carrier. He had to take naps. I was breastfeeding at the time, so I, was sitting on a log on the mountain, like kind of vertically, feeding my son. We had to change him. We had to change his diapers. And now he can do a lot of that stuff by himself. He is so much more independent, of course, right? Our role as parents on the mountain has really changed, has really shifted to guiding him, to motivating him, to helping him overcome the mental barrier when it gets hard. And I think you can kind of see the parallel here with language. When my son was a baby, he needed help with everything. We were saying one word 2-word phrases to him, waiting, having him repeat, saying the same words again over and over and over and over and over again. We were doing all of the speaking. He wasn't speaking yet. We were doing all of the work. And now that he is a young child, he has a lot more ability, he has a lot more skill, and the challenge for us as parents is a lot more psychological. It's a lot more trying to fill him with confidence, trying to assure him that he can do it. He can keep going on the mountain. Our role is much more as like a guide to continue motivating him. Something really interesting came up on our hike regarding motivation. So there were these like little markers along the way on the mountain. I believe it was like 0 to 50. So the mountain's broken up into 50 parts. And then at every marker, you would see, oh, you're at the first, 1 out of 50, 20 out of 50, 30 out of 50, etc., all the way up to 50. And when we first started the hike, my husband and I were motivating our son by offering him like a little candy at each marker. So we told him at every marker we get to, we can all have a little piece of candy, which I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that, but we thought it was a good idea at the time. And it turns out that we were wrong. Around like 15 or 20, he started to get a little bit demotivated, like he was only doing it for the candy, and that made the parts in between the markers not very enjoyable because he would just be whining and worrying and asking for the candy. Like, are we almost there? Can I have a candy? Did we get to the marker yet? Are we almost there? Are we almost there? Can I have a candy now? I can't wait. I can't wait. And so this turned the hike into something that was not very fun because we were only trying to get to the next marker to get that reward, to get that candy. So while I do think that rewards like this can work in some cases, and it definitely worked at the beginning of the hike, but as the hike got more and more challenging and longer, this type of motivation worked less and less for us. And I think this is also true of language learning. So what worked better? So when we reached like around the 20th marker, I want to say, my husband started turning the hike into a game. He's very, very smart. And so he and my son just started pretending to be like invisible ninjas or something. I'm not really sure. Like they were chasing sharks. Whatever this imaginary game was, it kept my son so engaged and so excited that he was like fighting the bad guys, going up the mountain, and he completely forgot about the candy. He stopped asking about the candy. He ran way ahead of me. My son and my husband were running up the mountain, way ahead of me. I was exhausted and he was fine. He was not worried about his tired legs anymore. It was like magic because he was just having fun playing the game. And also they were speaking French to each other as usual and practicing language. So I think there is a really great lesson here, right? If we can make the journey itself fun, if we make language practice fun, or if we add a language practice to something fun that our children already enjoy doing, and you have to enjoy it too, you will want to speak English together. You will not have to force it. You will not have to wait for those rewards. Sometimes rewards are great. Sometimes they work, but not all the time. And I think a much better, more sustainable way of motivating ourselves and our kids is to find something enjoyable. When my husband and my son are practicing together, maybe this means fighting invisible bad guys. When I am practicing language with my son, it means doing art, making crafts, because that's what I love to do, and my son does too. And so we make things together. That is our happy place to practice language together. I also make it fun for myself by getting a fun drink, make a coffee, whatever you need to do to make the journey of practicing English together fun. Do that, bring that into the activity, because then you will look forward to it and your child will look forward to it too. All right, where am I on this list? All right, so we have been doing a lot of hiking and camping this summer because it is really beautiful here. Last week we had some visitors and we all went camping together, and our visitors were English speakers. They only speak English. And so there were many times, many times when my husband and my son were speaking French together, because they always do. And when my husband and my son were speaking to each other, the visitors just didn't understand anything. They didn't know what was happening. And, we're out in nature, having conversations with each other, and there's not really any other distractions. So we are just talking to each other. And so this kind of happened a lot, where they're having a conversation in French and the visitors don't understand. And I had a little realization moment that this is one of the prices of raising kids with an additional language. It's uncomfortable sometimes. It's not comfortable. Just like climbing a mountain is not always comfortable, it can be very uncomfortable to climb a mountain. Sometimes to practice the language, to stay in the language, is uncomfortable in public or around other people. And you don't always have to stay in the other language. This is just what works well for our family, that my husband and my son always speak French together, or 98% of the time they do. But it can be maybe a little bit uncomfortable. Other people might feel left out sometimes, left out of the conversation. And a little bit of discomfort is the price that we pay for raising a child who can speak this language fluently. On the other hand, I have seen other parents who do not do this. For example, we know a couple. They are from France, a French-speaking mom and dad, and their son, they speak to their son in French at home most of the time, I believe. But I've noticed that when they're in public, when they're at activities with other English speakers or other international folks, that the parents will speak to their son in English, not in French. So in public, they'll use English together. There's nothing wrong with this. Every family is different. And so I do think you just need to find what works best for you. And for some people, that will mean living with a little bit of discomfort. When we're teaching English, when we're teaching a language to our kids at home, I think it's important to fully commit to this, to really say it. I want to raise a bilingual child. I want my child to learn English at home. To share that message, to share that goal with your friends and your family members, and to really be bold about it. And if things are not going exactly how you planned, exactly how you wanted them to, you can still continue with your goal, with your dream, in a different way. You can have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, E, F, G in place, because there is more than one way to teach English to your child, okay? So just because your bold plan A doesn't work, doesn't mean that one of your other plans won't work too. But let's bring some bold energy to this. You can do this. All right, and in that same kind of vein, related to what I was just talking about, I want you to take some deep breaths And know that you can take breaks. We can take breaks on the mountain. We're not going to run up the mountain all in one go. We are going to take a lot of breaks. Sometimes my son does not feel like speaking a particular language or doing an activity in a particular language. We might have to stop for a little bit and take a break, take a breath. I think in these moments, we really need to trust ourselves and trust our children, trust that we can come back to English, trust that we can come back to the language in a few hours, the next day. We don't have to give it up completely. We can take breaks. When we're tired on the mountain, we don't just turn around and go back down the mountain, right? We just take a break and then we continue going. I am really guilty of having this all or nothing mindset sometimes. Sometimes I don't want to try something if I know that I can't do it perfectly. I often want to be able to do it exactly the way that I want to do it. And this doesn't work with teaching English, with learning English, with helping our children with English. If I use an all or nothing mindset, I'm going to get nothing. If I need to be perfect and to speak English every single day and to practice every day perfectly, I'm going to get nothing. So please remember that something is better than nothing. Just doing 5 minutes a day, just doing a little, listening to a song in English, watching a short TV program in English, reading one simple page of a book in English together each day, that is better than nothing. You don't have to give up completely. You don't have to speak English all day long in order to give your children a lot of benefits and to teach your child a lot. This is what I have learned with my son in Spanish, because often we are doing a lot of basic, simple stuff in Spanish because we're already tired with 2 other languages and everything else we have going on at home. And so sometimes we only have time for really simple things like reviewing our colors in Spanish, or maybe counting some toys in Spanish, counting to 10. And I can choose to feel really disappointed by this, or I can tell myself, we did something. You know, something is better than nothing. And last month, was it last month? I took my son to his first Spanish class, in-person Spanish class, and I saw that he actually knew a lot of things and he was confident in himself and he did a really great job in this little Spanish class. And again, I had that moment of like, okay, it's worth it. It's worth it. Even if it's not perfect, it's worth it to continue doing this, to continue doing something a little bit, to keep that spark of language alive. Probably the biggest lesson I learned during this hike is that I need to work on myself more and worry about him less. I think that I can sometimes underestimate what he is able to do. Before we climbed this mountain, I was a little bit hesitant. I was a little bit unsure. Like, can he really do this? You know, like it's going to be really hard. He's done other hikes before, but this one is a lot steeper. I'm just not sure. And then when I saw him just running up the mountain, I realized that I had really underestimated him. And it was me. I was the one who was struggling. I was the one who was struggling to keep up with my son and my husband. And so I think it's really important as we're learning and teaching languages with our children to remember that we really do need to continue working on ourselves, on our own skills. We're learning alongside our children, and we also need to do some additional work of continuing to learn. However you want to do that, you know, classes, taking classes, listening to podcasts, whatever it is that you do to practice English. And also believe in our children a lot more and not to underestimate their abilities, because they really can do so much more than we know. And my son surprises me all the time. I really need to give him more credit for what he's able to do. If you want to learn more about how to teach English naturally, to your children at home, I highly recommend that you watch this video next. And I will see you so soon. I'll see you so soon. Bye.